Okay, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on one sec. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so.
It's not the easiest shirt
Your
to
headphones over here.
clip there.
I can hear you touching the mic through these headphones right here. Let's try that. Okay.
Okay, and we're rolling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Rebecca, the first thing that we're asking everybody to do is to introduce themselves, and exactly what you say is up to you, but the format would be something like, I'm Rebecca Garrison Sokoloff?
Yeah, I'm hyphenated.
Okay, am I pronouncing that right, Sokoloff?
Yes,
okay.
Sokoloff.
Oh, great, okay. I'm Rebecca Garrison Sokoloff, and I'm a cancer survivor. You could say what you do, something short, but that sort of encompasses how you would identify yourself in this context, if that makes sense.
Okay. I'm Rebecca Garrison Sokoloff. I'm 33 years old. I own my own business. I'm a graphic designer, and I am going on 5.5 years as a cancer survivor.
Great, that's perfect. Let's do one more take, just so we have a sort of a backup version.
Okay.
But that was great.
Okay. My name is Rebecca Garrison Sokoloff. I'm 33 years old. I own my own business. I'm a graphic designer, happily married, and I am also a 5.5-year survivor of cancer.
Great, thanks. So obviously, I know we're going to be asking you some sort of personal questions here about cancer, about your experience with cancer. Everyone has a different sort of style and willingness to talk about some of these things. So again, I just want you to feel free to
shoot.
And I should say I was just sort of calculating your and doing the math, so to speak. My wife actually was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer when she was 28, and she's a cancer survivor going on more than 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I have some understanding of the kind of thing that you went through.
Yeah.
I think. So I want to begin though with there's the experience. Tell me about your diagnosis. What cancer? What was the cancer? How did it happen? What was the experience?
Okay. My experience actually started. I obviously have very pale skin, and I always have known the rules. If something weird appears on your skin, run to a dermatologist. Make sure it's okay. I was referred to a dermatologist. I was living at the time in Miami because I found that a mole on my back that I'd had all my life had started to develop a brown spot on top of it. And I went to the dermatologist. He looked at it and he said, "That's not a problem at all. It's a new mole that's piggybacked onto an old mole. But if you want it removed, go to a plastic surgeon because you're very young, and if I take it off, it'll leave a scar." So I walked out of the office and I went, okay, well, that's not a big deal. And 6 months later, I was actually in Boston. I was staying in a hotel and they had floor-to-ceiling mirrors, and I walked out of the shower and I could see it because it was on my back. I could see that it had grown significantly, and I just, my pit of my stomach, I said, this isn't right. Something's not right. So I went to a plastic surgeon to have it removed, and I found a surgeon in Miami who wasn't a boobs and lips guy. And he went in, he took a look at it, he said, I don't know what your dermatologist was talking about, but I'm very concerned about this. He scheduled me for his next available appointment. I had it taken off, and 2 days later I got the call, we need you to come in early, and could you please make sure that someone's with you? And when you get that call, you know that something very bad is about to happen. So I went in with my husband, and You know, it's like getting hit with a ton of bricks when someone tells you that you have melanoma, that your chances that it has already spread are very good, and that you need to come in, and, you know, decisions start getting made very, very quickly, and things are being thrown at you. And, you know, I sort of sat there and took it all in. My husband threw a fit and started throwing things around the room. We called my parents. But, you know, that was day one. It's like, I don't know, it's like restarting your life day one, diagnosis day. And then what you do from there, you got to find a path.
What did you do from there?
I went through surgery first to remove a much larger portion of my back. I had lymph nodes removed in my groin on both sides. And then I waited like 2 weeks, because you have to wait a certain amount of time to heal before you can see an oncologist. And I went into an oncologist that was highly recommended, very reputable guy in Miami. And you would think in Miami there would be a lot of people who would be interested in melanoma, being that it's so sunny. And I walked into his office, and he came in with a giant book. And he said, look, I carry this book around everywhere I go, because the reality is we don't really know much about the cancer that you have. So the information that we do have, they keep updating in this book. And let's see what they have to say today. And he opened this giant book out, and he said, well, the book tells me you've got about a 50-50 shot. 50% of people that are in this state, you know, you've done the right thing, you've had it treated with surgery, and you'll be okay. The other 50%, it comes back within 5 years and usually kills them. And he looked at me and said, you know, but the reality is I don't have any treatment options for you. So, you know, my husband and I went home, and we said, well, that's crazy. What do you mean there's no treatment options? 50-50, I'm 27 years old, I'm not accepting that. That's not happening. So we found a second oncologist who specialized in melanoma. He was the only person in Miami, actually, who specializes in melanoma. And went into his office, and he went over everything, and he said, look, you know, the reality is that there are no approved treatments for what you have. But I do have connections with the National Cancer Institutes, and we can see if, you know, you might be eligible for one of their clinical trials. And that was where we started. And I did my first clinical trial about 4 months after being diagnosed, which was a year-long clinical trial at NCI, where I flew up to their facility every 3 weeks, and it was a vaccine injection that I got in the leg. And you know, it was a really great experience. I don't know if it well, I know it didn't work in the long run because it did come back, but it did keep it at bay for 3.5 years. And it was, you know, for me it was a very beneficial experience. It also got me into a position where I could meet other people that were going through it and share information with other patients, because all the patients in that room, they're all choosing what you're choosing. They're all choosing to be proactive and go out and try to find something. You know, don't just sit back and let the first doctor you see tell you, oh, well, you know, you got a 50-50 chance, flip a coin. You know, go out and find something to do. So, yeah, I did the treatment at NCI, and I went in for scans there every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months following that first year. And everything was great. Everything looked great until 2.5 years ago. It actually, my husband and I had just moved back up to New England, and I went in there for a routine scan, and they found a new tumor which was lodged behind my liver in front of my ribs. And at that point, they wanted to immediately put me into a program to do IL-2, interleukin-2, which ironically one of their doctors pulled us aside afterwards and said, look, the study wants you to do IL-2, but my recommendation is if you can go and have this thing surgically removed, go and have it surgically removed. So at that point, we parted ways with NCI, and we found the Moffitt Cancer Institute in Tampa. We sort of have a motto that we will travel for medicine. So I sort of have oncologists all over the place at this point. But the best in the business that year was Dr. Weber at the Moffitt Institute. And so we flew down to Tampa and we met with him. And he said, yeah, I would take it out, and we have clinical trials going on. So we went, again, surgical route. They removed the tumor. They took out one of my ribs that was touching the tumor just to be 100% sure that they had everything. And we started looking at clinical trial options. He then referred me to a clinical trial that was going on in Charlottesville, Virginia, at the University of Virginia, with a doctor named Craig Slingluff. And we started flying to Virginia once a week to get a different vaccine, which unfortunately about halfway through just didn't seem to be working because I started finding subcutaneous nodules in my back. So I had another round of surgery there, and then ended up in Boston at Beth Israel and Dana-Farber. I did a course of IL-2, and I was a partial responder to that. And about a year ago, things started to progress again and get worse, and luckily I got into a clinical trial for a drug made by Plexicon, which is pills that I take in the morning and in the evening. And they have some side effects, but the best effect of it is that 72 hours into taking them, I could literally see tumors under my skin shrinking away, which is, I thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I went on the drug and ran into into my bedroom and said to my husband, you know, you have to feel this, you have to feel this. I swear I'm losing my mind, or these things are actually going away like overnight. And he went, no, you're not crazy. And the first time I went in for scans, it confirmed that like 75% of what I had was gone. So now I'm at almost a year mark on that drug, and I'm going in there every 3 weeks and getting new drug and doing scans every 6 weeks and that whole process. But you know, it's my third clinical trial, and I'm grateful for every one of them. I credit them for me being alive.
So I want to ask you about clinical trials, and obviously you've taken a very, very aggressive approach to your treatment.
Yeah.
And some of these questions obviously are the obvious sort of stupid questions, but tell me about the importance of having those kinds of options, you know, those kinds of treatments. You know, I know that's also difficult because, you know, I've also seen people go through that kind of thing. But tell me about your experience. I guess, you know, on a sort of broader scale, you know, what it means to you.
I think that short of diagnosis day, there is no worse feeling for a cancer patient than being hit with, we have no plan. There's no plan A, there's no plan B, there's no plan C. You know, I mean, when you're 27 years old and a doctor is saying that to you, it's a pretty unbelievable thing to hear. And clinical trials, they offer a plan. You know, it's just that peace of mind that we're going to keep trying things until something works. You know, if this doesn't work, don't worry, we have another plan. And I'm willing to do that. I kind of am in disbelief that a lot of people won't do it. You know, it's your lifeline. You have to keep trying whatever is out there. And you know, yes, there are side effects to these things. There are things that you know, you don't know what's going to happen. I could grow a third arm out of the back of my head in 10 years, but it's a risk I'm willing to take because it is the only option. So for me, clinical trials are the hope in all of this. And when I see them, when I sit in a room full of people that are all going through them and I hear the stories, and so many of them would be considered, miraculous recoveries. But it shows me how much closer we're getting every day, and I remember so vividly sitting in my oncologist's office at the Moffitt Cancer Institute, and him saying to me, we really do believe that within 5 years, we'll be able to give you something that will, keep this disease at bay or cure it. And your whole goal right now needs to be make it to the finish line. Just make it to that finish line. And for me, that's what clinical trials are. Just make it to the finish line.
So, talk a bit about, that process, that make it to the finish line. I mean, for yourself, for other people who may be, their diagnosis day may be today or tomorrow. How do you look at the future? How do you keep that hope going? That's so important.
For me, I look, everybody has good days and bad days with this disease, and that's inevitable. But I have taken the attitude that as long as I am doing something, and I'm doing everything I feel I can do, which is not just clinical trials, it's what I eat, it's working out, it's keeping myself healthy in every other way, it's trying to support my own immune system so that the clinical trials that I'm in and the drugs can do their job. It has to be, you have to have an attitude that you're going to help. You can't be 100% reliant on anybody else. But as long as I can keep that in my life, I can go about my life as usual. I've been really lucky that, with the exception of being on IL-2 and a couple of side effects, I've lived a very healthy life, and that I feel fine. I feel great. People see me and they're like, "Oh, you look great." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm out living my life. I won't allow cancer to dictate what I will do with my life." I work a full-time job. I own my own company. I'm happily married. I travel the world with my husband. I'm close with my family, and all of those things make me feel like a person, not just a cancer patient. And I think that for everybody, coming to that point is a different road. For me, after I went through my first clinical trial, I did have real issues with, okay, now what? Which is a big question. You finish your treatment and you sit around and go, so now I wait to see if it comes back. And that is actually, I think, the real mental torture of it, is just sitting there and waiting and going, is it going to pop up? When's it going to pop up? What's it going to be like next time? Is there going to be another treatment for me? But when I went through that, I actually sought out a therapist who specialized in cancer patients. And, within a couple of sessions of her just saying to me, it's completely normal to feel that way, and it's okay to have those thoughts, and then you move on. And that's the best advice I can give to people, is just do everything you can, accept the thoughts that you have. They're normal, but you can't let them overtake your life. You have to just keep going and understand that there's going to be a plan B and a plan C, and don't let anybody tell you that there's not going to be.
So, I don't know if this is the right word, but there's almost a, there's sort of a stigma, or just like this terrible weight to the word cancer.
Yes.
And there are all sorts of terrible diseases out there. Cancer is a word that, as you say, when you hear it, or when a loved one hears it, it's just got a really special, horrible weight to it.
Yes.
So for people who haven't been through your experience, but may someday, because it touches everyone sooner or later, one way or another. What would you say about that? About like dealing with that weight, and supporting people who have to deal with it?
Well, 5.5 years in, my husband still can't say the word cancer. He will refer to what's going on as, my situation, my medical issue, but he still can't wrap his hand, he can't say the word. It just bothers him too much. I own it. It's just it's a small part of who I am. But yeah, it's a, when you hear that somebody has cancer, it is like being hit by a truck, but it doesn't always have to be that way. And as drugs develop and as you get great medical treatment and you have support, there are ways out of it, for a lot of people. Not everyone's lucky, and not everyone finds that right combination that's going to work for them, but it's certainly not. Well, I guess I'd put it as, I remember the day that I was diagnosed, my doctor saying to me, I know that you feel like you just received a death sentence, but a few days from now, you're going to pick yourself up and you're going to decide to fight. And you're going to have the support of everybody around you. And it's so true. It really is the way that you feel. It's like someone told you, A, you're going to die. If you survive, you're going to lose all your hair and be stuck in a wheelchair, like, smoking a joint or something to get through the drugs. But when you have a team of people around you and everybody is helping and everyone's researching doctors and, giving you information and looking for clinical trials and looking for other options, eventually it comes together and you pick yourself up and you go, yeah, okay, I'm going to fight this and I'm going to live my life. So that's, once you're assured of that, I think that's the only time that, that was when I started to be able to say, yes, I have cancer. And that's okay. It's not great. I'd prefer not to, but at the same time, life goes on.
Yeah, my wife always talked about how, just how it focused everything. And
yes.
It sort of, if, all of that sort of stuff about, oh, what am I going to do with my life? And what will I, do tomorrow? And suddenly it's just like this laser.
It is.
Focus.
It gives you a focus, and it also really emphasizes that whole philosophy of, choose your battles. It takes all of the crap that has been in your life, that has bothered you so much, all those little things that are really insignificant, and it just forces them to roll off your back. And, I think a lot of cancer patients, it's almost become a cliche. It's like, well, cancer gave me this gift of being able to really appreciate everything around me. But the reason that everyone says that is that it's true. You suddenly really value everybody in your life. You see who your close friends and your family really are. It stands out. People you'd never expect to pick up a phone and call you and care so much suddenly do. And yeah, it rearranges your world, and in a lot of good ways.
So where are you at right now? I mean, just in terms of dealing with the whole weight of it and thinking about next steps in the future.
I'm in a pretty good place right now, I guess. I go back and forth, and again, I still have good days and bad days. Right now, I still have a few subcutaneous melanoma nodules that they've decreased in size significantly since I've been on this drug, but they're not gone. So it's not like I'm under the illusion that this cancer has been eradicated from my system. It hasn't. But right now, I feel great. And I know that every day new drugs are coming out, and the day that this drug stops working, hopefully there will be a drug that will be the next step. That's my plan B and C and D and E at this point. But we're not running out of options yet. But sure, people always send me articles about the drug that I'm on. Oh, I read in the New York Times, that the drug you're on is this close to getting FDA approval. And in those articles, there's always statistics about, well, the average person, it only lasts 7 months, and I'm at a year. So of course, you have that thing that goes off in your mind and says, oh, God, it's a ticking time bomb all over again. But at the same time, I remember that everybody's cancer story is different, and cancer reacts in people's bodies differently. And one person once described melanoma to me as just a child that was misbehaving, that you could never figure out what it was going to do next. And that's what it's like. And I have accepted that, and I look to plan B, But for now, I'm doing okay.
What else that I maybe haven't asked you about would you want to communicate to people who are watching this? Again, these are just sort of members of the public who visit the Koch Institute, who are, they're wondering about what goes on in the building, they're wondering about cancer, they're wondering about the experience.
Well, the number one thing I want to communicate to all people out there is when someone tells you that they have melanoma, no, you can't go out and zap it off with a laser. It's a real form of cancer. It drives me nuts. Oh, I have melanoma. Oh, it's skin cancer. You'll be fine. No, I didn't lay in a tanning booth, and I didn't spend every day at the beach. I just had really light skin, and one burn really can do it to you 10 years later. But I guess the most important thing is just when that day comes, and hopefully it won't, but if that day comes, when you get diagnosed, I would say seek out the best doctor you can find, and the doctor that specializes in what you have. That you don't just pick up the yellow pages and find an oncologist, that you do real research and you find out who is the guy who has access to the clinical trials that are going on, who can get you into every program, and who's going to take an interest in your case. For me, I'm still friends with my oncologists. I'm friends with doctors of mine. The guy who diagnosed me 5.5 years ago is on Facebook with me. But the reason why is that they took an active interest in my case. And I think it's so important to do that. Don't just go to a doctor who you sit in the waiting room, you see them once every 6 months, and they give you 5 minutes of their time, because they're not doing you any favors. You have to be proactive, and you have to find doctors that are proactive and are going to just push and be aggressive and get you into whatever your body can handle to try to get it out of your system.
And I mean, we've covered this, and I should say don't be afraid of repeating yourself. But,
okay.
Can you talk about, and I guess I'm in a more compressed way, talk about clinical trials and participating in that decision and recommending it?
Sure. I guess I've had the greatest luck with clinical trials, but I was a person who had no options going into my situation. I was diagnosed and was told there is no treatment for what you have. So I guess that sort of twisted my arm a little bit, but clinical trials are a gift, and not everyone is going to work for everybody, but every day through these clinical trials, they're getting closer and closer and closer to controlling these diseases, understanding them, and eventually eradicating them.
If I can maybe jump in with a little follow-up here. I'll give you a little bit more background about the Koch Institute, where this exhibit will be. The whole mission of the Koch Institute is to bring together scientists and engineers to speed up the amount of time it takes to go from a discovery about cancer to a treatment or a diagnostic tool or something, sort of to speed up that curve of going from the bench to an actual practical thing that's in a clinical trial or is available. And I guess, for this we've been interviewing all kinds of people, whether they're people who work at the bench, people who are trying to move things through clinical trials. But I think you have an interesting perspective because in addition to sort of your using clinical trials as an aggressive way to deal with your own cancer, you're a critical part of the research that could contribute to new things reaching the market. And so I wanted to see if you might want to talk about that at all, if you had any thoughts about
About being the guinea pig?
Sort of being involved in research from that angle.
I guess, yeah, being a part of clinical trials, you are a human guinea pig. But there are facilities that don't necessarily need to treat you that way and don't treat you that way. I think anybody who's participated in enough clinical trials has had sort of one experience or another where they felt a little removed, or they didn't really have a doctor and people weren't really communicating with them. But in general, I've never felt, used by the experience, but I am certainly happy that anything that I've done could potentially help other people. Even if something doesn't work for you, the value of knowing that it didn't work for you and understanding the reasons why it didn't work for you help the next person along. So, it's a process that I'm definitely proud that I've been a part of, even for the clinical trials that haven't worked for me. And I hope that they can go on and help other people. Does that help?
That's great.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, or Alex, any other questions?
No, I think.
Anything else you'd like to add? Thank you so much. That was really wonderful.
I think that's it.
Well, the last thing that we're doing with everyone, what we call the portrait, which is basically you just stay where you are and look straight ahead, look at me for 30 seconds or so, and we just kind of film you. You don't have to smile, you can smile, but it's just basically you still.
And the idea is that in the exhibit, at sometimes nobody will be talking. You'll just see all these different faces of people.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's it. Great. Thank you.